When I was in college, I always liked my teachers telling me a little bit about themselves, where they lived, where they went to school, what their families were like, and this helped me connect to them more, right? I mean, you'll often find that you remember more about your teachers than any certain thing that they taught, right? You seem to pick up a lot on how they interact with the material as much as you pick up the material. So I always promised myself I would do this kind of autobiography at the start of a class. I now hate that promise because it seems so narcissistic, right? But I promised I would always do this. So, briefly, when I was a little kid, I would test as a smart little gifted student. And early years, I really liked school, right? I liked pleasing my teachers. They would see I would do a good job. I'd get a little gold star, right? And I always loved working hard. I always thought that made you a good person, even as a little kid, probably from my dad. Anyway, though, by the time I got to junior high, high school, I really had very little interest in any of the schooling because I started surfing. I grew up in Southern California and spent every waking hour in the ocean, not hanging out at the beach acting like a surfer, but literally in the ocean. I got quite good actually. I used to be a cool guy. I was all state for a couple years in California. That would be like being good at football in Texas, right? So people thought I was cool just because I surfed well. I guess I was more attractive then and such. Anyway, long story short, by the time I got to junior high, high school, I wasn't very devoted to school. I graduated high school with a 2.7 grade point average. And my teachers were always saying, you are so bright. You might be one of the brighter kids in this class, but why don't you try very hard? And I would very politely just say, oh, I'm more devoted to surfing, right? I am so sorry, right? I'll do what I can. And then what would I do? I would never take books home. I would just ace the exams and get by with C's in all my classes. What did this mean? Never got in trouble. Graduated on time because I would always attend class, but never tried to excel more than just getting C's. Great way to do high school. Now, what does this mean? This meant that people weren't really happy with my life prospects, right? I was really tan, I was in great shape, I had long, almost blonde hair from being in the sun so much, but my family was really feeling like they were losing me. Here was this smart little kid getting all A's, and now I was just getting C's and just happy to do nothing but surf. So my dad said this to me, and this was a key thing, and I've recently made this deal with my son. He said, you will need to get a full-time job and pay rent unless you are clearly doing something for your future, like going to college full-time. Well, of course, I study the hours. What would I rather do, a full-time job? No, that would leave very little time for surfing. Then I realized that going to college full-time was just like a part-time job, and so that was a great decision. So, I started at the local community college. This is in Mission Viejo in Orange County, Southern California, at Saddleback College. And here's what happened. I thought I made the greatest deal possible, work a little bit in a surf shop, just a few hours a week, and then go to school full time and tons of time for surfing. Problem. I loved school. It was like being in kindergarten or first grade again, right? I got to pick my classes. My teachers seemed to really care. And I just became this super nerd. So I thought the plan was just to surf. And then, by the way, here was the plan the whole time. The plan was to go to school just long enough to where I could become an elementary school teacher, because that seemed like another way where I could devote a lot of time to surfing. But again, the problem happened that I fell in love with school. So, went to Saddleback College, started majoring in everything. Now, as I told you from that philosophy studies everything. We were the inventor of most of the subjects in academia. Well, I started studying everything because I just became a nerdy know-it-all, wanting to know everything. So I thought college was a place where you just majored in tons of things, whatever you were interested in. And then, because I was planning to be an elementary school teacher, it didn't matter what degree I got. So I started studying everything and then luckily stumbled upon philosophy so I could still study everything and then get a degree in this nerdy philosophy stuff while studying anything I wanted. Problem. I really fell in love with school. So after I got an AA at Saddleback College, I transferred to the University of California at San Diego. This is one of the best, especially at that time, one of the best philosophy departments in the world. A great, great university, top 30 in the world, I think it is, something like this. And it literally has one of the best surf spots in California on campus called Black's Beach. So no, no, it's super easy decision. Went down there, so I did a bachelor's degree in philosophy, concentrating on the history of philosophy with a little bit of side work in ancient languages. While I was there, I mentored at a little inner city San Diego elementary school because the plan again was to teach elementary school. So I started doing some of that extra work while I was doing this work. Uh, all this time, the only job I ever had was working in a surf shop. So every summer I would go back and work in the surf shop and just surf. Then, problem, there was more things I wanted to learn, right? So I wasn't ready to get a job as an elementary school teacher, but I was always just planning, as soon as I feel like I've learned enough, I'll go teach elementary school and surf a lot. Well, next move is I moved to Chicago. Sorry, so I finished a bachelor's degree in philosophy at UCSD. Then I moved to Chicago to study theology and biblical languages at Trinity in Chicago. While I was there, I taught elementary school. Remember, this was always the plan. I taught elementary school at a mega Korean church. I mean, thousands and thousands of people in this church in Chicago, and there were only 2 white people there. Now, this is a fun little tangent. There was one old guy that had yellow fever, God bless him, right? Asians are so cute. And then there was me, and I was teaching elementary school. So there was a reason for me to be there because the Korean 20-somethings with college degrees, and they didn't want to teach the other little kids. And so my buddy, who was the youth pastor there, hired me, and it was great. The kids liked me, were really nice to me. But, fun little aside, it was interesting to have what I'll call safe or lowercase r racism directed at me because I was infringing on this very Korean institution, this mega church, where the people thought, okay, this is our place to be comfortable and not have whitey around. And there was this little young nerdy whitey who was trying to teach their kids. But it was fascinating because full racism has a legacy of violence, right? So if I hear, say, my son drop the N-bomb, I tell him, you can't use that word. There's a legacy of violence from white people to black people using that word, so you can't. Now, there's no legacy of violence of Koreans attacking, white college students, so I was never afraid. But it was interesting to see these, older generation Koreans whispering negative things about me under their breath. And so it was fascinating to always have the privilege of being white, male, heterosexual, and all of those things. And here, all of a sudden, they didn't like me because I was white. It was interesting. Again, safe, but fascinating to have that 2 years of experience. Anyway, so I did a master's degree in theology at Trinity, and then I took a year off, and I went to France for a while, surfed in France, and just practiced my French. Then I went to and got a second master's degree at Boston College. Now, this was in European philosophy, so mostly French and German philosophy at Boston College. So notice, I'm getting to see the country as I'm getting different degrees. A brilliant thing to do if you're a nerd, right? Go to different cities, different schools as you're getting your education. While I was there, I got my first job teaching college-age students. I was the tutor for languages, theology, and philosophy for the football team, which was fascinating, right? A number of my students I tutored went to the NFL. That was really cool. But then I realized this might be even more fun than teaching elementary school. I always still planned to teach elementary school, but then I realized I'm becoming so nerdy. There are many things that I won't be able to teach to my elementary school students. And so then a big shift happened. Now, at this time, after the degree at Boston College, I moved back to California, took a year off while I was thinking of, do I start teaching elementary school? Should I keep studying? And this is when I got married to my wife, Kelly, and we started a family, right? So she gave me this ultimatum. If you're going to keep going to school, then here are the schools you can choose from because we need to be around the grandparents so we have free daycare because my lifestyle is really poor at this time. So I got a teaching fellowship at the University of California, Riverside, which was really great. What did this mean? They would pay me to work on my PhD there as long as I promised to teach there while I was going to school. So everything was now decided. Teaching college is even more fun than teaching elementary school, and I could keep learning because there were tons of things I keep wanting to study. The key moment there was when I was starting to think about where do I want to get a job. I started teaching everywhere in the Riverside area. This is Southern California, or the middle of the eastern parts of Southern California. Anyway, I started teaching at 2 different universities there and a bunch of different community colleges. And that's when I realized that the place for me, again, the professors are saying, okay, you have a bunch of degrees, let's find you a university job. I didn't want to. I wanted a community college job because that is where I learned the most as a student. And community college students seem to be more open to genuine learning. I was getting sick of university students. What did they want? Just to prove how smart they are and really just getting grades. It didn't seem like they were interested in learning new things that much. Anyway, so I took this job, what was it? 16 years ago, I believe. It ended up that this place gave me real freedom. They let me teach what I wanted to. It is great to be overqualified at your job, right? You get a lot of freedom, and it's just been brilliant here. So let's see. Quick personal life. So my wife Kelly and I, been married 22 years now, something. We have 3 kids, so we gave birth to one and then adopted a couple kids out of foster care. And by the way, the key to adoption is you select it like it's a beauty pageant, right? You look at the issues the kids have, see if you can handle it, and then you just base it on looks. So my kids are way better looking than your kids. They don't look like me. Even my biological daughter doesn't look anything like me. Win-win, right? My kids are better looking than your kids. Let's think. So those are the stories you'll be hearing. I'll always put stories about my wife or my kids, and so now you can get a sense of who they are. Everyday sort of hobbies. So I'm always reading tons of different things. I'm always trying to teach myself new subjects. So typically every year or 2, I devote myself to a completely new subject. Lately, it's been a lot of psychology and political theory, but I'll do all sorts of different things, right? Evolution and biology was my focus last year. Agriculture was a few years ago. Let's think. I've had to give up on surfing, so I used to be cool. Now I'm not cool at all. I golf, right? I know golfing is so dorky, but it is so fun. It is so weird, right? So please don't make fun of that. All right, thanks.